Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 52 units of real estate. So today I want to talk about my outlook for the multifamily market going into 2025. And this is kind of based on the experience of, sending out letters and making offers on multifamily and just being able to talk to the sellers and kind of seeing the situation they're in. So, I've sent out a lot of mailers. My students in mentorship program have been sending out a lot of mailers. And this is kind of the general response that we've been getting from sellers. So a lot of sellers that typically reach out back to us, um, what happened was they might have bought during COVID when interest rates were low. So you're talking like 4 or 5, less than 4% interest rates, and they got a 3-year fixed loan or a 4-year fixed or a 5-year fixed loan. So the loans are starting to be coming due. But what's happening is let's say you got your apartment in 2020, right? And then you overpaid for it because, interest rates were low. And when interest rates are lower, cap rates go down. So if your cap rate goes down and you have an NOI that's the same, the value's up, right? So people, like a lot of syndicators, a lot of people who are buying multifamily, they kind of overpaid for it. And now a lot of the loans are coming due in 2025, right? If you locked in 2020, you got 5 years, you got to 2025. That's why for me, what I always teach and preach is you want to get at least 7 to 10 years fixed, and that's what I did for both of my properties. For my 26 unit, I got 10-year fixed. For my 20 unit, I got for 10-year fixed. My 26 unit is like a 4% interest rate fixed for 10 years. My 20 unit is 6.5% fixed for 10 years. And I always preach for a 10-year fix, even though interest rates are higher, right? Because you're locking in longer term, you're guaranteed this rate. And when I fixed it for 10 years, I didn't expect interest rates to skyrocket this much, right? No one did back in 2021 during COVID, right? Like everyone thought interest would always be low, like 4%, 5%, worst case 6%. But the reality is today we're seeing 8% to 9% interest rates, right? Depending on which lender you use. So, let's just say you bought an apartment in um, 2020, when interest rates are 4%, and then fast forward 5 years later today, it's 8%. Your interest rate doubled, right? If your interest rate doubled, what happened to your cap rate? Your cap rate increased. Maybe you're underwriting at a 7 cap. Now the reality is the cap rate is a 10 cap. So if you're able to raise your NOI a little bit, but your cap rate goes from 7 to 10, you just lost a lot of value in your property, right? So this is where a lot of real estate investors are getting burned today, right? Because when they bought in 2021, they might have bought it for like, let's just say $1.4 million. But because maybe the NOI didn't go up as anticipated, right? Because maybe rents didn't go up as much as you thought, and expenses got higher, right? Property tax got more expensive, insurance got more expensive, repair got more expensive, labor got more expensive, everything went up. So your NOI didn't go up as much as expected, but if you're underwriting at a 7 cap, but now it's a 10 cap, your value just plummeted significantly, right? So maybe you bought for 1.4, and maybe you did, a 75% loan to value loan, you put 25% down. So, you kind of have, what is that, about like $450,000 into the property. So let's just call it 400. So your loan might be $1 million. But now, assuming a 10 cap market, maybe the value is only, you can sell for like a million or less. So now you're underwater on the deal. Um, so, you know, it's really interesting. And I'm starting to see it now because I don't know how many letters we sent out. And I saw owners who are like desperate to sell. Their loan is called in January 1st of 2025. So they're desperate to sell it, and they're just trying to sell it at the price they bought it at to break even or recover their costs, right? Maybe they bought it for $1 million, they put in $300,000 renovation, they're all in for 1.3. They're trying to sell it for 1.3, but if you were to underwrite their property using today's interest rates of 8%, to hit a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25, um, and taking their NOI divided by whatever a 9-10 cap, if you're buying like in Oklahoma or the Midwest, the values aren't going to pan out. It's not going to be worth 1.3. Maybe you're offering a lot less, and that's a hard pill for a lot of sellers to swallow, right? Like it's hard to take a loss. Like if you bought for a million, you put in 300, you're on for 1.3. You can only sell it for like $1 million or $800,000. You just lost like $500,000 in this deal, right? So, and what we kind of been noticing is a lot of banks, they're kind of extending loans And typically, when you extend your loan term, you're going to pay fees and penalties, right? So if you want to extend for another 6 months or 12 months, you're going to pay another point and some fees, another point and some fees. Or if the bank is nice, it varies. They might just extend it to you free of charge because it's just a waiting game, right? Because administration is changing, so maybe banks are like just kind of pausing and saying, okay, like is interest rates going to drop? Hopeful, like people thought interest were going to drop to 5% at the end of this year, but it hasn't. It stayed the same, right? It's still like 7-8%. So I have a feeling, this is my prediction, in middle of 2025, that's when banks are going to start to stop extending these investors and these loans. And then they're going to foreclose on these owners and operators. They're going to take back the deals. And that's when you can come in. If you have the money, you underwrite it correctly, you can buy these properties at 40, 50% off, right? Because the bank just wants to, foreclose, cut the cord, and most likely these multifamily operators they've been deferring maintenance because they're trying to save money or keep as much of the money as possible, knowing that the bank's going to take it back. So this is when you can kind of come in as an investor, as long as you underwrite it correctly, right? The numbers don't lie. I talked to one of my brokers, mortgage brokers today, and then he just reinforced it. Like, Steven, like, the numbers don't lie. Just underwrite it under today's numbers, and when you do the pro forma, underwrite the pro forma under today's numbers to give you a safety net, right? So you have to buy right, and you're gonna make very disrespectful offers. And I used to feel bad about that, but just make an offer that makes sense for you, right? Like for example, I made an offer on an 80 unit apartment complex, and he wanted $5 million for this property, and maybe $5 million could have worked when interest rates were 4%, right, and cap rates were a 7 cap in Oklahoma. But when I underwrote the deal, um, I assume 25% down, amortized over 20 years instead of 30, because it's an older C-class property. So I want to be conservative, right? I used to underwrite a 30-year amortization. Now I do 20-year or 25. But it's an older property, and if I go local community bank, it's gonna be 20 years because it's a 1970s property, and I'm gonna underwrite at 8% interest rate, um, and from that, I want to see a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. So I have a video where I do all the math. I'm just doing this at a high level. So check out that other video. I think it's called Underwriting an 80 unit apartment complex, where I show the whiteboard math, but this is just high level. So if your interest rate's higher, to hit their debt service coverage ratio, you're going to need a better NOI, right? Because a DSCSR 1.25 means that the NOI must be 25% higher than your monthly debt payment. So when I looked at the deal, I did all the math, and I basically calculated that the most I could offer on this property is $3.2 million, right? So the owner wants $5 million, so that's a $1.8 million drop. But for me, like, those are the numbers today, right? So what I did is I typically do two offers, right? Because I know, like you said, there's gonna be discounts on deals if you're ready for it, right? And you have to underwrite today's numbers. So I offered 3.2 because I know, like, okay, I'm gonna probably renovate each unit for 10K per door. That's about $800,000. So I'm all in for $4 million. And after I'm able to raise rents on all the 80 units by $200 per door, and factoring your new NOI, factoring the 9-10 cap rate that you're gonna underwrite, it's gonna be worth $5 million, right? So I'm all in for $4 million. It's worth $5 million. So I have an exit strategy here because I was able to put in 800, and I was able to raise forced appreciation by $1 million. So if it's worth $5 million, I can do a cash out refinance and get back most of my money that I put into the deal, right? Assuming 75% loan to value. Maybe I'll leave a little bit of money in the deal, which is okay, right? You don't have to pull all your money out. So that's how I underwrote it. So I'm like, he wanted my pro forma price, and I was like, it doesn't make sense, right? So to me, and then on this deal, like, the way I'm even at 3.3 million, day one it'll cash flow about 5K per month, but if you have a major expense, it wipes that out. So you have to, like, buy right is the key thing. That's how I'm not going to get wiped out. I bought right. I locked in 10-year debt, and it just gives me options. Like, worst case, like, if when I locked in 10 years for 6.5% interest rate, well, if it drops in like 5 years, I can always refinance, right? I just might have to pay 1% penalty fee, but that's better than me being forced to refinance now when interest rates are like 8, 9%, and maybe the values went down. So now I have to, I cannot refinance as well as I thought I did. So You just have to make offers that make sense for you. And then I made a creative financing offer. I once again broke it down in my video of $4 million, and that's overpaying because I already know like if I buy 4 million and I'm putting $80,000 into this deal, I'm all in for 4.8, and it's only worth 5 million, right? So if that's the case, I would ask for at least 10 years um, of the seller financing term, at least, and then I would build in a clause saying, in 10 years, if this doesn't appraise and I cannot pay you off and get all my money back, we're gonna extend this another 5 years, right? Because in 10 years, what I'm hoping for is that cap rate interest rates will go down. Subsequently, cap rates will go down, right? Hopefully the rental income goes up, and hopefully the expenses they always go up too, but hopefully slower than the rents going up, right? So like if I'm overpaying for property with creative financing, which I always do, right? Because I want to, um, you know, make the numbers work so I cash flow. Like if you see my other video with a $4 million offer price, I want 10% down, 5% interest only on $3.6 million. Um, I think I'm going to cash flow 12K a month on this deal, right? So this is more of a cash flow deal, but then I need to wait at least 10 years for cap rates to hopefully drop, interest rates to drop. And if it does it sooner, I can do cash every pay them off sooner, right? But if I'm all in for $4.8 million, my ARV I'm going to be aiming for is at least 6 million, right? And I don't see that happening with these current interest rates in the next 5 years, so maybe I have to wait 10 years, right? So you always have to bake in protections for yourself. If I'm taking a risk and paying more, I want to make sure that it's a longer term to give me a longer time horizon, right? To make sure I can renovate all these units, to slowly raise the rents, to slowly manage the fees. So, to kind of summarize, I think in the middle of 2025, you're going to see a lot of banks foreclose on multifamily lenders. So I would say keep in touch with local community banks, right? If you're like me, you like to buy 5 to 50 units around there, or it's mom and pop owners. A lot of people have gotten burned. A lot of people have overpaid for multifamily. A lot of people have locked in low interest rates, and now they're being called due 5 years later. It's 5 years now. So once banks take back the deals, that's when you can make really good offers and get 50-60% discounts. Because banks, when they take back a property, they already took the down payment, right, from the prior owner. They already got interest payments from the prior owner. If you look at your mortgage payment, it's mostly interest, right? Like even me, I pay $2,000 a month. Like 400 is principal, 1,600 is interest. So the banks got their money for the past 5 years. Now they're just trying to get rid of it, foreclose on them, offload it to another investor who's experienced, who has a track record, who knows what to do, right? So you just have to buy right. Like this is the key point I want to hit. You have to buy right, even if you make disrespectful offers. Like for me, I made an offer and I said, hey, this offer makes sense for me. If you don't like it, it's okay, right? Nothing personal. You move on to the next deal, right? And here's my conventional offer, and here's my creative offer. And my creative offer is always going to be overpaying, but it's going to have terms that hopefully will protect me, and I'll explain that, right? But it's hard, right? It's a hard pill for swallow for people to lose money. It's a hard pill for people to swallow that they cannot sell it for what they bought in and how much money they put in there. So, and that's because of interest rates, right? So now, like I said, it's a bad time to sell. But a lot of people are being forced to sell. So, like I said, wait to the middle of 2025. I think there may be a lot of good multifamily deals on the market where you could buy it for 50-60% off when banks take it over. And like I said, just keep in touch with these local community banks. Like that's what I'm going to be making an effort to do, is maybe once a quarter touch base of all the local community banks in Oklahoma, and just say, hey, if you ever get any deals or you foreclose and you want an experienced operator to take it over, and I'm happy to take a look, but the price needs to make sense, right? And like I said, a lot of these owners, they're probably deferring maintenance, so it's going to be another value add situation because they know they're going to get foreclosed on, so they just minimize maintenance. So when you take it over, you're going to have to do a lot of capex, right? So that's why you have to make sure you buy it right, factor in your capex, and do good due diligence, and make sure the cash flow works day one. So you should be buying it should be cash flowing day one, and then you should have the ability to renovate it, raise the rents, and then the ARV after that should well more than recover your down payment, recover your renovation costs, and all of that. So that's how it does. I know it's hard. Like a lot of my students are struggling. Like they're like, man, it's hard to get someone to say yes, and it is because people are thinking of 2020 prices, but in reality, that was when interest rates are 4%. But today, it's 8% interest rate. It's a different ballgame, right? So you have to make an offer that makes sense to you, and If you're the bearer of bad news, well, I'd rather you piss off a seller than you buy a bad deal, and now you're stuck with it, right? So that's why I said you just have to be patient and wait, and eventually, once you get your one home run deal, that's all it takes for multifamily to have financial freedom, to build a lot of wealth. Like you just need one home run deal, and that's it. Like you can stop, right? So like that's what I did. I got a home run deal in my 26 unit. I'd say my 20 unit was maybe a double, because interest rates were higher on that one too. If it was lower interest rates, 4% instead of 6.5, when I got it in 2023, like it probably would have been a home run deal. But because interest went up, it made it a double. But if it was 8%, which it is today, it just would have been maybe a single. So, um, just be patient and trust the numbers is the key message. So hopefully you found value from this multifamily update. If you want to learn how to buy multifamily real estate, some guidance, check the mentorship program down below. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what questions you have. Hope to see you next one. Thank you so much.